You know that feeling when your phone buzzes with another message, and instead of feeling excited to see who it is, you feel a small wave of exhaustion? Maybe it's a friend asking if you're free this weekend. Maybe it's a group chat that's been active all day. Maybe it's someone you genuinely care about. Yet your first instinct isn't to reply, it's to put the phone down and deal with it later. Then later becomes tomorrow, and tomorrow somehow becomes next week. For years, many people assume this means they're becoming antisocial or disconnected from others. Some even wonder if something is wrong with them. But psychology suggests something surprisingly different. The urge to avoid everyone isn't always about rejecting people. In many cases, it's revealing something important about how your mind is trying to protect itself. Here's what makes this fascinating. Most of us have been taught to see social withdrawal as a warning sign. We assume that people who avoid gatherings, ignore messages, and spend long periods alone must be lonely or unhappy. But psychologists have repeatedly found that this isn't always true. Some people who avoid social interaction aren't trying to escape relationships at all. They're trying to escape something much less obvious. They're trying to escape the mental and emotional demands that often come attached to those relationships. Once you understand that distinction, a lot of human behavior suddenly starts making sense. Think about how much invisible work goes into even a simple interaction. When someone sends you a message, your brain immediately starts processing multiple things at once. What should I say? How will they react? Am I replying too quickly or too slowly? Did I forget to answer their last message? Most of this happens automatically, so you barely notice it, but your brain notices it. Every conversation requires attention. Every relationship requires maintenance. Every interaction asks for a small piece of your mental energy. One conversation isn't exhausting. 10 conversations aren't exhausting, but hundreds of tiny social obligations accumulating day after day can create a type of fatigue that most people never recognize until it's already overwhelming. This is where things become psychologically interesting. Researchers have found that the brain has a limited amount of emotional and mental energy available at any given time. Imagine carrying a backpack throughout your day. If someone places one small stone inside, you probably won't notice. If they add another, it still isn't a problem. But if people continue adding stones every day, eventually the backpack becomes heavy enough that you start looking for relief. That's often what emotional exhaustion feels like. It rarely comes from one dramatic event. More often, it comes from hundreds of small demands accumulating over time until your mind begins searching for ways to reduce the weight. And here's the part most people overlook. When someone starts avoiding everyone, they aren't necessarily avoiding human connection. They're often avoiding additional demands on already depleted mental resources. There's a huge difference between those two things. You can deeply love your friends, care about your family, and value meaningful relationships while still feeling exhausted by the responsibilities that come with maintaining them. From the outside, this behavior looks like withdrawal. Internally, it often feels more like recovery. Now, to where this gets even more interesting, studies on emotional processing suggest that some people naturally absorb far more information during social interactions than others. Imagine two people attending the exact same gathering. One leaves feeling energized, the other leaves feeling completely drained. The event was identical, the conversations were identical. So what happened? The difference is often found in how much information each person's brain was processing. While one person simply participated in the conversation, the other was reading facial expressions, interpreting tone of voice, monitoring group dynamics, and reflecting on how they were being perceived. Their brain wasn't just attending the event, it was working overtime. The wild thing is that many people who avoid everyone don't even realize they're doing this. They simply notice the outcome. They find themselves declining invitations, ignoring messages, and choosing quiet evenings alone over social events they might have once enjoyed. Because the effort happening beneath the surface is invisible, they often assume they're becoming less social. In reality, they may simply be experiencing a level of mental processing that requires more recovery time than they realize. Anyway, here's another layer that rarely gets discussed. Many people who avoid everyone aren't exhausted by interaction itself, they're exhausted by performance. Look, whether we admit it or not, most social situations involve a certain amount of self-management. You choose your words carefully, you monitor reactions, you adjust your behavior, you think about how you're coming across. Most of this happens automatically, but it still consumes energy. Over time, some people begin craving the one place where none of that is required. Solitude becomes appealing not because they dislike others, but because it's one of the few environments where they can simply exist without performing. This completely changes the way we think about social withdrawal. From the outside, someone spending an entire weekend alone may look lonely, but loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is the painful feeling that your need for connection isn't being met. Solitude can be deeply restorative when it's chosen. You can spend an entire weekend surrounded by people and still feel lonely. You can spend an entire weekend alone and feel completely content. The difference isn't the number of people around you, it's how the experience feels internally. And honestly, this realization can be incredibly validating for people who've spent years wondering why they need so much space. Modern culture often celebrates constant availability. You're expected to answer messages quickly, stay connected, attend events, and maintain a busy social life. But psychology increasingly suggests that people have very different social energy requirements. Some individuals genuinely recharge through interaction. Others recharge through reflection, solitude, and a few meaningful relationships. Neither is better. They're simply different ways of maintaining balance. If you're finding yourself relating to this so far, consider subscribing. These conversations explore the hidden psychological patterns behind everyday experiences, and sometimes understanding those patterns can completely change how you see yourself. One of the most surprising findings in personality research is that people who are comfortable spending time alone often possess qualities many people spend years trying to develop. They tend to have stronger self-awareness, greater emotional independence, and a clearer sense of identity. They don't always need external validation because they've learned how to generate a sense of stability from within. Silence doesn't automatically feel threatening. Solitude doesn't automatically feel empty. Their internal world provides a sense of engagement that many people only seek externally. And perhaps that's the biggest misunderstanding of all. When people see someone avoiding everyone, they often assume that person is running away from life. But in many cases, the opposite is true. They may actually be moving closer to themselves, closer to their thoughts, closer to emotions they've been too busy to process. Sometimes the desire for solitude isn't a rejection of connection, it's an attempt to reconnect with parts of yourself that have been drowned out by noise, expectations, and constant stimulation. So if you've ever felt guilty for wanting more space, more quiet, or more time alone, psychology offers a different perspective. Your need for solitude may not be a flaw. It may not be evidence that you're antisocial. It may simply be your mind communicating something important, a request for recovery, a request for reflection, a request for balance. Because at the end of the day, the psychology of people who avoid everyone isn't really about avoiding people at all. It's about understanding the invisible ways mental energy gets spent and recognizing that different minds recover in different ways. Some people find renewal in crowds. Others find it in quiet. Neither is wrong. Neither is broken. They're simply different paths toward the same goal, feeling like yourself again. If this perspective resonated with you, subscribe and join us for more psychology deep dives. And if you know someone who often disappears for a while before coming back, share this with them. They may discover that what they've been calling avoidance is actually something much deeper and much more understandable. And sometimes that's all psychology really does. It gives a name to something you felt for years but never fully understood. And once you understand it, you stop seeing yourself as the problem. You start seeing the pattern instead. And that small shift can change everything.